Okay, everyone. So we're just going to take a moment to settle into the space together. And you can have your eyes opened or closed for this part. Really just bringing an attention to the breath and the body. Feeling the air move in and out of your chest, your stomach. Letting the distractions of the day just float away now. Allowing yourself to come into deep presence and connection with yourself and this moment. Just reminding ourselves that there's nowhere to be and nothing to do, but just be here now, grounded and centered in presence. And whenever you're ready, you can bring yourself back. Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of Living in Alignment. My name is Kirshni, and I'm excited to have you guys join us for this conversation. Today, we're going to explore a topic that's perhaps a little out of the ordinary. As interest into alternate healing practices continues to grow around the world, many people are turning to natural medicines to complement and sometimes even replace Western therapeutic measures. Today, we are going to explore one such natural medicine called Kambo and create some spaciousness to learn more about this indigenous tool and how it can be used to support the body's healing process and our own evolution as human beings. To talk us through this, we are joined by Calvin Baytopp. Hey, Calvin.
Hi, Brittany. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you today?
Doing fabulous as always.
Wonderful, glad to hear. So, a bit about Calvin. Calvin is the founder of Mowana Collective and is an extensively trained Kambo facilitator, yogi, and Reiki practitioner. Curious, compassionate, and endlessly inventive, he embraces his calling to guide others toward healing, presence, and the extraordinary in everyday life. Calvin is also a cat dad to two wonderful creatures, an artist, and a creator who believes beauty can be found everywhere if we choose to see it. Well, it's really good to have you here, Calvin. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you today.
Oh, likewise, it's a wonderful space to be able to share this fantastic medicine, and like you said, create some openness and understanding regarding natural therapeutics and indigenous knowledge that can benefit us in really deep, meaningful ways.
Nice, I like that. So, Kambo has really been growing in popularity and prevalence amongst the Western world in recent years. I had my first experience with you about 6 months ago and really found deep resonance with the medicine. Perhaps you can set the stage for today's conversation by sharing a little bit about what Kambo is exactly.
Right. So Kambo is quite an interesting medicine. It's nothing like a psychedelic medicine or a plant medicine, in fact. Um, Kambo is the secretion from the Phylomedusa bicolor, which is the giant waxy monkey tree frog. And these are frogs that inhabit the Amazon basin, all the way from Peru down to Brazil. So they inhabit a huge area of the Amazon. Um, and these frogs are really beautiful. They're these bright green arboreal frogs that are pretty much the size of my hand, maybe a little bit smaller. And the the medicine itself is called Kambo. That is in reference to the secretion or the frog sweat that is harvested from the frogs. This this frog secretion is its natural defense mechanism. So in the jungle, they have no natural predators. Um, but with Kambo, the medicine side of things, us humans obviously are using this medicine. So we've become their sort of number one predator in a way. Um, and this frog sweat, Kambo, is quite a powerhouse of um, bioactive peptides, which are sort of like small chain amino acids, which interact with our bodies in different ways according to our current state of being. Um, and there's probably around 24 identified peptides in the body. Um, and that's more of the sort of Western scientific side of things, um, where the traditional side of Kambo is actually a lot more simpler. There's not as much fluff as there is in the Western world. So traditionally, Kambo is a hunting medicine used by the tribes like the Matse, the Katukina, and the Yawanarwa. And this brings um, vitality to their bodies so they can sustain long periods of hunting. Um, because these um, tribes hunt in the jungle, it's hot, prey or what they're hunting is not readily available. They don't farm, so they have to go out and hunt for what they need. And Kambo gives them that resilience and that vitality to hunt for long periods at a time. The way it sort of came to the West was through a journalist, Peter Gorman, um, and he was doing a lot of research in the Amazonian jungle, with specifically with the Matse tribe. Um, he came across Kambo through ayahuasca, actually, not through vision or anything, but he got introduced by chance to this medicine, spending time in the jungle with these tribes. Um, and from his experience, from his interactions with the medicine, it's spread to the West, where it's become, especially in the States and places like South America and even Bali, the sort of spiritual capital of the world at the
Yeah.
moment. Everybody seems to be moving there to set up some sort of practice. So Kambo is spreading globally at the moment, even though it's still very much in its infancy in the West. Um, it is sort of exponentially finding its calling and feet within the Western world, if that makes sense.
Yes, that really does. That does make sense. I found it to be personally a very expansive and supportive experience that really profoundly reflected the intelligence of nature and the earth. And a part of me, after having three experiences with Kambo so far, part of me wants to lean in and share that wisdom with others, but also conscious of the fact that when I try to broach the subject, there still is some taboo or perhaps fear for many people around the use of indigenous medicine, especially for us Westerners. Do you feel like that resonates in any way as a leader in the space, and why do you think that is?
I think as Westerners, we're very disconnected from nature itself. So there's a huge lack of understanding of nature and its place within our own constitution.
Hmm.
We don't understand the plants, we don't understand the animals, we don't understand the how do I put this? We've we've lost reverence for nature, and with the lack of understanding comes fear because
Hmm.
we don't know what it's going to do and we don't know how it's going to affect us. And with a lot of these plant spirit medicines, including Kambo, which is an amphibian medicine, the stigma is that first of all, it's a bunch of voodoo. It doesn't work because it's not a an approved medicine that has been administered by a doctor or a professional healthcare professional. Um, so that's sort of the first block. We go, oh, does this actually really work?
Right.
Because there is, specifically speaking for Cambo, there is not a lot of research to back up the medicines. And the people, I feel, in the Western world sometimes rely more on the scientific side than the natural side or the spiritual side of these medicines. They want the answer before having to take or receive the medicine.
Right,
they want
exactly.
they want to know it's going to work before actually experiencing or committing to any of these natural medicines. So I find that yes, it does resonate, and there is a lot of stigma surrounding these things. Also, it kind of sometimes makes us facilitators or people that do receive these medicines look a little bit crazy. We put ourselves through quite a bit,
Hmm.
um, which is quite a brave thing to do, is to step into the unknown. But in doing so, we expanding the knowledge, and in doing so, sharing it with other people, therefore bringing trust to what it is, and that's how it's going to spread. The more people that experience it, talk about it, and talk in reverence for this medicine and honestly about these medicines, create a shift in the sort of global consciousness regarding these medicines.
Hmm. Beautiful, Calvin. Thank you for sharing that. So it sounds as though Kambo has a very deep history in the Amazonian rainforest. How on earth did you come to find this and become a facilitator in this space? Please tell us more.
All right, so as as I've grown up with my family, we've always believed in natural medication. I wouldn't say plant medicines as such, but herbal medicines, herbal alternatives. Um, and that sort of alternative space that I grew up in allowed me not to rely on Western medicine. So I would first look for a plant medicine, a herbal medicine, or an alternative practice or protocol to help heal myself or deal with what I need to deal with. So from a very young age, that was a part of me. My mother is a herbologist. Um, she's a very she's very clued up with her plants, specifically indigenous um, indigenous medical plants. Um, so I've had that upbringing of being surrounded by indigenous knowledge, essentially, and what these plants can do for us. And that being said, it kind of makes it sound like I've always had this enlightened state, but that's not always the case. We're human and we go through struggle. And I met Kambo through a personal struggle. It was in a very low point in my life. I was struggling with severe depression, fatigue, lack of passion. My energy was just on a very low vibrational frequency. And it was affecting my life physically, mentally, spiritually, personally, friends, family. And it got to a point where I suffered something called adrenal failure, where my body shut down. It was quite a scary experience because it was almost like a paralytic state where I collapsed to the floor. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. And that was a very, very scary and very low point of my life.
Mm.
And even though I thought I was doing things right, eating healthy, exercising, um, practicing yoga, all these things that I thought were keeping me aligned, there's always that, or there can be that buildup, which we don't face. And when it builds up, it can just hit us like a ton of bricks out of nowhere,
Mm.
um, and put us into very dark states. Um, I'm fortunate that I had the awareness to go, okay, something is not working, something is very wrong. So my first step was to find help, and it didn't go directly to Kambo. It kind of went through something called psychotherapy or skiotherapy, which is like a bioenergetic feedback modality. And I'd been through a couple of sessions, and then a very good friend of mine, um, her name is Ray, and she said, Calvin, I've got this interesting thing that I think might help you. And I was like, okay, cool. What is it? She's like, okay, it's called Kambo. It's where you put a toxic frog secretion on your body, and it makes you purge. And the description was quite a intense, very scary situation.
Just
I
like I have
remember.
no other choice now. I'm just gonna like go to the poison.
So I honestly thought she was crazy.
Right.
I was like, my crazy aunt, second mother, whatever you want to call her, she is like a second mother to me, actually.
Mm.
I was like, oh boy, this is one of Ray's tangents. What is she going to get me into? And I deliberated on receiving Canva for a long time,
Mm.
um, because it's a very arduous medicine to work with. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it's easy. It puts us through a very physical um, reaction. Um, and as soon as you bring it up to most people that you're going to throw up or vomit or um, they already go, no, thank you.
Mm. What's wrong
Why?
with you?
What's wrong with you? You're already like kind of vulnerable and in this like really sensitive state. Now you're going to go force yourself to throw up and go through this real arduous process. And it challenges our ego. because our ego is essentially responsible for keeping us safe. It doesn't like change, and it doesn't like us to step outside of the bubble we've created, that comfort bubble for ourselves. So I kind of just swallowed the bullet and said, okay, what do I have to lose? I trust Ray, um, and on the day, rocked up at the Temple of the Universe, which is a beautiful sacred space in the Henots near Hardebeespoort. And I rocked up there, and again, I was taken aback because I hadn't really met these kinds of people. I didn't know how to talk about these medicines or these experiences. Um, and to step into that space kind of having no information, because prior to my Kambo, my first Kambo, I didn't do much digging because I felt it was going to scare me even more, and I'll just go get to a point where I'm going to just say no, sorry, this is it, just no.
Yeah.
So I kind of went in with a very blank slate, but also a very open mind to receiving this medicine. Um, and this was about 4 years back now. So my first Kambo, looking back, probably one of the most profound experiences in my life. Specifically stepping into this kind of medicine work, receiving the medicine, and this alternative healing space. It was a literal shock to my system, which
Mm.
is, I think, what I needed in that state.
Yeah, definitely.
Is
Exactly what you needed
literally,
sometimes.
literally shook out of the state I was in, and it did put me through a vigorous awakening. Put it that way. It wasn't gentle or peaceful.
Yeah.
um, it was a good shock to the system, which I needed. And surprisingly, on that day, I didn't really understand it at the time, but Kambo and I formed a very powerful relationship and bond. Um, and if I remember in my rest period after being through my purgative state, um, there was a quiet voice in my head going, "You're going to work with this medicine for the rest of your life." And 4 years later, here I am, facilitating and serving Kambo, um, and it's been a beautiful journey for me.
Mm. And I must say that you hold the space really well. And definitely having had you facilitate my first experience, not only did I feel like I formed a bond with the medicine itself, but also with you, because I think there's a lot to be said about, you know, yeah, just care and compassion in this process. Also, just want to point out a couple of things, and that is that, it sounds very spiritual and otherworldly because it is, but also just acknowledging that, like, to come to this process of healing, we don't have to be spiritually inclined. We don't need to be meditating every day and working with plant medicines consistently. It's really about feeling the call to step into the space of healing and kind of, as Calvin said, unburdening ourselves of some of the heaviness that we carry around with us in life, because there's a lot of trauma that gets stored in the body. And Kambo certainly feels like it helps alleviate some of that pressure in the system and that heaviness. Okay, Calvin, so we've spoken a little about Kambo, the history of Kambo, where it's come from and where we're at right now with the Western administration, but maybe you can guide us a little about how Kambo is actually administered as a natural medicine.
Can definitely do that. So, as I mentioned, Kambo is the secretion from these tree frogs. And the way it's applied is through something called gates. So, the first step is to open gates on the skin, which is going to expose the subcutaneous layer or epidermis of our skin. Prior to that, the medicine is reconstituted. So it arrives to us on dried plates. I think I have one here. So sort of these dried plates, and the medicine sort of forms a crust on these plates. So the medicine has to be reconstituted to return it to that sort of slimy consistency. And once the gates are opened, the medicine is applied on those open burns, essentially. These are superficial burns made with a vine from the Amazon called Tamishi. And that's just to remove that top layer of skin for the medicine to penetrate into our bodies. Initially, it does not travel into the blood, it travels through our lymphatic system. So once the little Kambo dots are applied, they're like half, even a quarter a size of a pea that are applied to these open gates. And the medicine then travels through our bodies. And what the medicine does, because it's intelligent, it's scanning our bodies for blockages. It's looking for the trauma, the dis-ease, the sickness within us. And in the jungle, they call it panima. And this is a dark energy which then manifests itself into dis-ease, whether it's physical or mental. And that's the blockages that it's scanning for in our body. So the initial sensation of Kambo is kind of euphoric because it's sort of like this warm, comforting hug that's sort of spreading through your body. And for the first 60 to 90 seconds, it's like, oh, okay, this is not so bad. But once it's sort of scanned our entire bodies, and it doesn't just scan, it scans on a cellular level. So it's going into our lymphatic system, our blood, our muscles, our skeletal system, every cell. It penetrates through the blood-brain barrier. So it really does a deep dive into our bodies. And once it's sort of picked out or identified these blockages, it pulls this panima to our stomachs. And this is where we begin feeling not so lacquer. This is when our blood pressure will drop. We begin to feel nauseous and a little bit weak. And this is when the purgative process begins. It's to now release all the negative stuff that we've been holding on to, that trauma, the panima, the doesn't matter what it is. We set intention prior to receiving Kambo. So we connect in that intention to the purge, to release what no longer serves us. And the most common type of purge is vomiting, the upwards purge, which I would say 90% of the people that do receive Kambo will experience. And there are other forms of purging because there's a lot of weight put onto the upwards purge. It's seen as if we don't upwards purge, then the medicine is not working.
Mhm.
But the medicine works in numerous ways. So if somebody is not upwards purging, it does not mean the medicine is not working. There, there is sweating. So another form of purge, which is quite common, is sweating, where you're releasing that Panama through your skin, and you sort of just become like this thundercloud that just drips from every pore in your
That's you.
body. That is me. That is me. I'm a profound sweater when it comes to Kambo. Um, Literally embodying the frog. If you think about it, these frogs live in these hot, humid environments. That's
Yeah,
exactly
okay. Uh-huh.
what can happen, is just to sweat it out. Um, it's kind of like being in a sweat lodge or sauna. um, the other form of purging is cry, which is a really beautiful form of release, because as humans, we hold on to a lot of emotional trauma, and we don't really get the opportunity to release it. So, crying is a very beautiful way of releasing that emotional buildup and emotional trauma. I'd also encourage anybody to cry in a Kambo session, because it's a place of non-judgment. It's a place for you to be your authentic self, to connect with deeply with yourself, understand your current state of being, what no longer serves you, and then to release it. So Kambo is very, very grounding and allows us to connect very deeply with our present selves. Um, Another form of purging is fainting. This is also can be a little bit scary, but is also quite beautiful. So this is the medicine just taking us out the picture temporarily. It lasts a couple seconds at max, but sometimes we're resisting the medicine so much, and putting blockages, and we building walls as the medicine is trying to work.
Mm.
And that's out of fear, because we don't want it to, or our ego doesn't want it to get to that energy or that negative energy and dislodge it. So the Kambo goes, okay, well, let's take you out of the picture just for a couple seconds. Um, and in that point, um, as part of a facilitator, or part of my responsibility, is to make sure you are safe and looked after when you do faint. You can't just let somebody collapse on the floor and be gone. Be gone. Um, so that's when I would come sit behind you. You would fall onto my chest. I'll talk to you really softly, really encouraging you, making sure you feel safe, and comforted in that situation until you come back around and you can carry on with your process. Another form of purging is the downwards purge. That's when you'll need to go to the loo. Yeah, it's quite a also, as much as the upwards purge is powerful, the downwards purge is also just as powerful. It can be quite tricky to navigate, because you are quite weak and you have to stand up and get yourself to a toilet. Uh, but in that state, again, I guide, I help, I assist you to the toilet. Um, and I always have a bit of a laugh, because sometimes you're upwards purging and downwards purging at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
And in that moment, it's not so hilarious, but afterwards, you can always have a good laugh about
Get
it.
over it. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, returning to the purge, there's not one form of purge, and it doesn't have to be the upwards purge. The medicine is working regardless.
Hmm.
Um, it enters your body, and it's intelligent, it knows what it's doing, um, and will serve you in the manner you need in that moment. So yeah, once we've gone through that sort of arduous purgative state, um, it sort of starts to decline and you start feeling a little bit human. That's when I'll remove the dots, um, apply something called dragon's blood, which is a topical tree sap to seal the wounds so they don't get infected. It's an antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, and it just seals off those gates so they heal really, really well. It is then your chance to nap and really rest. As much as the Kambo does put us through an intense physical process, I find a lot of the time as people we don't get the opportunity to really rest our bodies, to rest our minds, and just forget about everything and allow our bodies to essentially recuperate.
Mm.
So resting is a very important part of the Kambo ceremony. It gives us a chance to integrate the medicine and just to take a breath and also just let it all go. um,
Quite literally.
yes, quite literally. Quite literally. So, sure, the Kambo ceremony is is quite a. The Kambo itself is a very short process. It lasts anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to half an hour. That's the window of release. The rest of the ceremony is made up of other modalities where there's meditation, there's setting of intention, there's working with hape and sananga. So overall, the ceremony lasts a good 3 to 4 hours, even if it's just a one-on-one ceremony. Um, so it is a lengthy process, but such a beautiful process.
Nice, nice. Thank you for explaining that. You were speaking about coming to Kambo with an intention. So, I would come into the space and I would be very, hopefully, very clear about what it is that I wish to work on for myself. What I really appreciated about Kambo is that there's no need to re-traumatize oneself through the experience of releasing. Sometimes with things like talk therapy, where you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist and you need to now rehash what happened to you and bring up all those emotions and that baggage and that pain all over again. It can be quite intense, actually. Um, and with this, you actually don't need to do any of it because the medicine does all of the work very subconsciously, even. I don't even think half of the time we really understand. Well, most of the time, I don't think we really understand what is actually happening in the body. But yeah, that's the beautiful thing that I really appreciate about it is that you just go in 20, 30 minutes later and you just feel like something has really lifted, whatever it is at that point in time that is ready to be released and transmuted.
Yeah, so Kambo is very powerful at creating that space in our bodies. And this is where I like to use a metaphor for Kambo, where I relate it to a very wise gardener. So once the Kambo's in your body, or first, let me put it this way. If we think of our bodies as a garden or a jungle, a natural ecosystem, put it that way, and there's plants growing and water flowing and the soil, and it's a living ecosystem within ourselves. And sometimes we don't look after it properly. and this ecosystem can overgrow, weeds can form, it can go barren, our streams and the water can get blocked, and it starts turning stagnant. So the Kambo comes in with its spade, its fork, its hose pipe, its fertilizer, comes into our garden and it goes, oh boy, what do we need to clear today? And it pulls out some of the overgrown weeds that are encroaching spaces. It tills the soil, it adds fertilizer, it goes to your water, it unblocks the pebbles that are blocking the streams from flowing, gets the water flowing, gets it clean, and what it's doing is creating space. And that space is the opportunity for us to then plant what will serve our highest good. And that allows that growth, that letting go of what no longer serves, to replace it with what is going to benefit and change our lives for the better. So Kambo is very good at creating space, and also creating that fertile environment for these new habits, new changes to be made.
Nice. Okay. So, I was just wondering, like, are there specific people that might benefit from the use of Kambo more than others? And how would I know if I'm a candidate for stepping into this space with the medicine?
Um, so I think first and foremost, anybody, pretty much anybody can receive Kambo. It will benefit anybody. You don't have to be suffering from a certain thing or working through emotion or trauma to have to receive Kambo. It's very good at um, the upkeep of our bodies. So keeping our bodies in alignment and bringing that state of homeostasis, allowing our bodies to remember that state of homeostasis. So anybody can receive Kambo, but there are people who benefit more from Kambo, and these are people with specific ailments. A lot of the time, it's depression. Sure, Kambo treats or can help treat. I can't say treat because it's not a cure. It can help us treat things like Lyme disease, fatigue, infections, autoimmune conditions, diabetes, chronic pain. So these are groups of people that would benefit more from Kambo. And this is due to that sort of psycho-spiritual connection with the medicine, as well as those peptides that make up Kambo that work kind of magic in our bodies, actually. A peptide is sort of a short chain amino acid that bonds in specific ways to our cells, which then help with these issues. Yeah, so it's also again powerful for breaking addiction or habits. So a lot of the time, people who suffer from drug addiction, alcohol abuse, would come to receive Kambo to break those patterns.
I can see that having lots of benefit in the Western world, specifically at this time.
Mm, yeah, yes.
Absolutely.
We use so many drugs to circumvent um, ourselves. We hate being present with ourselves. It can sometimes be a scary place to be.
Mm.
And we use all these things as distractions. Um, and that being said, not only hard drugs, but also plant medicines. I
Mm.
feel that's there's a shift towards using them to escape rather than to heal, to get in touch with ourselves, become present, and understand ourselves deeply and how we can change for the better. It's sort of just a workaround to to boost our ego, saying, "Ooh, I've done this, I've done Kambo, I've done ayahuasca, I do psilocybin trips," and that gives us a fake sense of healing where we're
Yeah,
not actually facing what we need to face.
absolutely. Escapism at its best.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mm.
escapism at its best.
Yeah. I think it's important for us to really acknowledge that with everything that we've spoken about today, it seems important that there's almost a sense of reverence and responsibility and respect that one must uphold when working with Kambo. How would one be able to identify a good facilitator in this space, and why is that important in this work?
Sure. To identify, well, it's important on a number of levels. First and foremost, for your safety. Kambo is not inherently toxic and it's not inherently dangerous. But in the hands of somebody who does not have the correct knowledge in serving the medicine, or if you self-administering in general the medicine itself, if you don't have the correct knowledge, that can create potential situations that can lead to harmful harmful things happening to oneself. So in in that regard, trying to find a facilitator who has been trained, and this means not having received Kambo 3 or 4 times and going, okay, well now I can just serve Kambo. It's a lot more nuanced than that, and it takes a lot of time working with the medicine, receiving the medicine yourself to understand how the medicine interacts with the body, what to look out for, how to read a person when they're in their process. So connecting that intuition to the medicine. So yeah, you're looking for somebody that who has been trained, who has an understanding of the medicine, um, and I think also asking questions to a facilitator. This is how you can gauge their knowledge on the information and and how they work with the medicine and what sort of space they will hold for you while serving the medicine. Because it's very important to hold a very safe, high vibrational and high frequency space. We can't just slap it on willy-nilly and pray for the best, even though there's a stark contrast between how Kambo served in the jungle compared to Western ceremonies. In the jungle, there is not much fluff. The space is your own. You receive the Kambo, you go sit by the river, and you purge by yourself. Whereas in the Western ceremonies, you are looked after very, very well. Um, and then I think another way to gauge whether the facilitator is a good facilitator is asking where they get their medicine from. Because anybody these days can buy a plate of Kambo online, but that doesn't guarantee that that Kambo was harvested ethically in reverence for and respect for the frog itself and the medicine. So sometimes it's good to know if there is a connection with the tribes, how that tribe harvests the medicine, um, and how they protect the frog as well. Because the frog is as much as we receive the Kambo, the frog is the source, the most important part of Kambo, essentially. Without the frog, there is no Kambo.
Mm.
So it's important to I guess vet any practitioner and ask hard questions to gauge their experience, their knowledge, and whether it's going to be an ethical practice or not. No frog should ever be harmed in this process. These frogs are relatively docile, very gentle creatures. And traditionally, the way the harvesting takes place is shaman would go into the jungle and mimic the call of these frogs. So basically sing to the frogs. And this will attract or call down the frogs from the trees. And the frog is then, depending on the person harvesting, will allow the frog to sit on a branch and they will sort of scrape that secretion off the frog's back and then return it to the wild. However, a more common practice is to restrain the frog a bit. So what they do is they tie dyed strings around the frog's ankle and sort of splay it out just so the frog can stay still and not hop away while scraping off the Kambo. Once they've harvested what they need, they make sure not to harvest all of it because this is the frog's natural defense mechanism.
Mm.
So they'll always leave the frog with a good amount of the secretion still left on them. But again, the dye in the strings that they use to restrain the frog lasts for up to 6 months. So you have these frogs with little white bangles on their ankles, and this signifies that the frog cannot be harvested. If you see a frog with that white bangle, it's off limits because they're still replenishing what we've taken.
Mm.
So that's the ethical way of harvesting Kambo, is to have these markers and systems in place that indicate whether a frog is ready to be harvested or not. Because if we just continue harvesting the frog's going to die.
Mm.
So that is a bit about how the medicine is harvested.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, and like on the point of finding a facilitator that's well equipped to support the unfolding process for every individual, I think is very underrated because, like you mentioned earlier, the process itself of sitting with Kambo is one that places a person in quite a vulnerable state for that just that little while, but having that space held really well by someone who is knowledgeable and compassionate, I think is really important. Really just feeling safe is probably one of the most fundamental requirements, I think, of um, feeling as though you are cared for and supported through this process, which is actually quite big work. So thank you for elaborating a little on what one could look for when trying to identify a facilitator in this space. What encouragement would you give to those who might be curious to explore Kambo, but may have some apprehension or concern around the process?
I think first and foremost, reach out to somebody who knows Kambo, who serves Kambo, who has been serving Kambo, somebody who has has a deep knowledge on the medicine. There aren't many people in South Africa, um, myself being one of them. And then there's my teacher, who I learned to facilitate and serve Kambo from Simon Varol, who is the custodian of the Temple of the Universe. Very wise, very knowledgeable man as well. And I think the first step is to have a chat, an open, honest chat about what it is, how it can help, and then go from there. I think once that initial barrier is broken, the it's more easier to step into that bravery and overcome that fear of actually receiving the Kambo. And and always, I think, before Kambo, after you receive your first Kambo, there should always be a space for open and honest communication. Um, how are you feeling afterwards? How has it affected you? Have you seen any changes in your life? I think integration is an important process, but as a facilitator, I can give you the tools, but I can't do your integration for you.
Mm.
Um, I haven't walked your path. I don't walk in your shoes, your everyday life. So I think integration is important, and facilitators can be there to guide, but they're not there to do the work afterwards. We we have to bring that awareness in. We've just had this expansive experience, this letting go with Kambo, to bring in that space, that awareness. It's for us to continue being aware after these ceremonies and being present, continuing with that sort of intuition and understanding of what we have learned and gained through receiving Kambo.
Lovely. Okay, so if I wanted to work with Kambo and explore a little bit more about the medicine, how might one be able to reach out to you for more information or support?
Um, at the moment, you can contact me directly, on my cell. I'm busy building a website where that will be, well, as soon as it's launched, will be the main contact point. And from there, it's it's open to anybody. Um, those who are curious, those who have received Kambo before, those who want to deepen their journey with the medicine. I'm always open to connecting and facilitating Kambo in the ways that best suit best suit the individual. It's not a one size fits all. It can be tailored to deal with specific things, mental, emotional, physical. Um, so yeah, it is a tailorable modality.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Calvin. I just want to take a moment again to really appreciate your time, your energy, and also for bringing us into this space with you, this very sacred space, and helping us to understand a little bit more about this mystical and magical creature that is the giant monkey frog. And yeah, we will have all of Calvin's information in the description box, updated when the website is available as well, so you won't miss out. In the meanwhile, just wish you the best on your journey toward, working with medicine and continuing to hold space for others. And hopefully, we will form a community soon that is really vibrating with the energy of Kambo in South Africa.
Oh, thank you so much, Krishni. Um, yes, I think this is a good launch pad for that community to grow, for information to spread. I'm really excited to deepen my knowledge, my teachings, my learnings, so that I can be a wiser facilitator. At the end of the day, it's about creating a safe space for people to do the work they need to do. I'm just there to hold space and facilitate. So yeah, I wish you all the best on your journeys. Hopefully see you in space again soon, and all the best.
Basi, thank you.
Yes, Basi, Basi, Viva Kambo.
All right. Well, that's it from us today, guys. Thank you so much for joining and hope to see you at the next session. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you feel that this is helpful for anyone else, please feel free to share as well. Thank you, Alexis, for that reminder. I'll get better at that. Okay, guys, chat soon. Bye.
Ciao.